A judge has now ruled the NFL had no right to increase Rice's suspension based on no new facts. The judge felt Rice had been open with Goodell from the beginning about what had happened. Because of the ruling, Rice is now eligible to play immediately for any team that will sign him.
Let's make it simple. Ray Rice will play in the National Football League again. This season or next, he will have a chance at redemption, such as perhaps not the case for the man who punished him, leading a sport loaded with more double standards and backroom dealings than an old-time Chicago politician. Let's welcome back to MidPoint the CEO of Horrow Sports Ventures and the man who started and remains the top expert in the business of sports, Harvard Law School graduate, syndicated commentator, better known as the sports professor, and an old friend. Rick Horrow joins us today. Rick, pleasure to talk to you again.
I am continually impressed with your colorful lead-in language. It certainly baits the hook. How are you, my friend? Did you have a nice Thanksgiving? Did you eat a lot?
Had a great Thanksgiving. Did not eat a lot. Ate just enough to get through the weekend and enjoy a few football games and move on from there.
Wow, because you look pretty good, man. You got to make sure that you continue to stay that.
You're right, Rick. I'm a tremendously good-looking man. It's wonderful of you to notice that, and everybody.
That's one of the few things we can agree on.
Let's see if we can agree on something else here. Is the biggest issue to take from the entire Ray Rice incident at this point, not that Roger Goodell might have lied, not that they might have not asked the right questions, but that this is a league right now that simply is the emperor with no clothes on parading down the street. They have pretty much been shown, once and for all maybe, that they will cover up anything in order to keep their brand nice, safe, sound, and profitable.
Well, that's one way to look at it, I guess. The maybe less cynical, although I'm not going to ascribe, way to look at it is that there needs to be some certainty, transparency, clarity as far as process goes. The brand requires it. Visa, Campbell Soup, Anheuser-Busch, Procter & Gamble, and the companies that, in Anheuser-Busch's case, spend $200 million a year requires it. And so Roger Goodell and Judge Barbara Jones are exactly aligned. They both say that they need a policy that is consistent and not arbitrary. Roger Goodell says he's going to get to it. Barbara Jones says he hasn't yet.
But he says he's going to get to it when I think you and I both know this is a system that needed something like this, an arbitrator, a long time ago. And they've been shoveling a lot of this under the rug for a long time here. They were pretty much exposed. So doesn't any of Roger Goodell's promises now fall on deaf ears?
I think not. If it comes up with a clear, consistent policy with Lisa Friel and her experts involved in creating it. Remember, we also have the Robert Mueller report, which everybody seems to forget is supposed to identify when Roger Goodell saw it. Did he see the tape? When did he see it? Who got it at the NFL and what was happening? That masks the bigger issue. The bigger issue is for all sports, if you have a commissioner ruling on the discipline of an individual player, is that appropriate? And how do you deal with it and make it consistent? I know it's a subject of collective bargaining, Ed. We've talked about that before, and we've also had discussions about the NFL Players Association being involved. We can't wait for the collective bargaining cycle. That's too much time. It's got to be something that everybody buys off on, and if Roger Goodell decides to give up some power in the context of eliminating some controversy, maybe this is the time to do it.
Well, wait a minute. You just said there about a minute we have, and then we'll take a break, come back and talk a little more, but you just talked about giving up some power. Any doubt in your mind that Roger Goodell's role as commissioner is going to change and is going to have to undergo some sort of metamorphosis simply because I don't know if people think they can trust him anymore?
Well, I'm not sure of that motive because I've worked with Roger for a long time, and I want to emphasize that I find him to be a very honorable, very trustworthy guy. I really do. I think the point right now is that the policy needs to be created, and there needs to be a perception of fairness, and maybe the way to do that is to open it up and have a few more people involved in it, even though when you look at the other leagues, they have their staffs do it, and the commissioner doesn't do it directly. So maybe there's something to be learned from other sports.
I do believe that Ray Rice is going to play again. Indianapolis and New Orleans, apparently two teams that reportedly have had some interest here. Do you think he will play this season, or the teams will simply wait, let it die down, go into training camp next year?
I had a bet with Christine Brennan, who is a good buddy of mine. The USA Today is a sports columnist, and she says that if whoever is right, she thinks he's going to play. I don't. and the winner dresses up in some kind of mascot suit and parades out in front of the stadium. So I want to make sure that I believe he will not play this year. Next year, by the way, is an entirely different story, and they've got a lot of time. Every team has a lot of time to do some spin work between now and next year.
Christine's an old friend of both of ours. I can hardly wait to find out the result of this bet because I want pictures. That's all I want.
I'm not
Stand
telling you.
by.
I'm not telling you.
No, you won't, of course. Stand by. Rick Horrow returns after the break. We spin to the dangerous trickle-down effect of football concussions and the political statements the NFL would rather avoid. And at 51 minutes after the hour, hear them speak and bellow from the Sunday talk show pulpit. It's right here on MidPoint. Welcome back to MidPoint. The CEO of Horrow Sports Ventures, the sports professor, Rick Horrow, joins us once again. Rick, let us turn to a tragic situation here coming out of Ohio State. Costa Karageorge, the young man who went missing for several days, found in a dumpster dead of an apparently self-inflicted gunshot wound. This comes down again to the discussion of concussions, mental health, and there's going to be a lot of discussion here again because the trickle-down effect, we've talked a lot about the NFL, but imagine what it's got to be like at the college ranks and then even down to the high school ranks.
Well, and I'll go even further than that. I'm on the Pop Warner board, full disclosure, proud of it. They want to make sure that they get the word out, that there are appropriate concussion, tackling, sportsmanship, events, protocol, standards at an early level. And so there's 10,000 kids waiting to go to the Pop Warner National Championship at Disney World. A lot of discussions next week at that event on the rights and responsibilities of parents and kids. Is the game safe enough? Most people think that the attention that's being directed to the game right now is a good thing, but you got to be able to take advantage of that. Football is not inherently too unsafe. It's just people who are in the middle of it got to continue to strive to try to make it safer, and that's what a lot of these organizations are all about.
I guess the question then is how young is too young? Because here's a study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health this past January found repeatedly concussed teens are 3 times more likely to develop depression. And at a younger age, I mean, neither of us are doctors here, but certainly concussions are a lot easier to get, if you will, with the young brain and the young skull, the young body, the way it's working here. So how young is too young? Where do you really draw the line as to when it's safe to have kids playing football?
Yeah, and Pop Warner's on the front edge of that, 8, 9 years old. There is also a study that say that the most prolific head injuries on a pro rata basis is college lacrosse and other sports, high school. So high school lacrosse as well, to be clear. So it's not just football, it's the prevention of injuries. And I know with Pop Warner there is a weight requirement. There is a heavy emphasis on tackling. And, you know, again, I'm not a doctor and clearly won't even pretend to be, but there is a lot of discussion right now on how to make all of these games safer with good-minded people. That's the important thing to remember here. You know, it all evolves. 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't a cover-up. We just didn't know then what we know now, and I think that's really important to understand.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to another political issue. I want to go back to the National Football League because this has really got a lot of people talking. The St. Louis Rams, when they came out of the tunnel for their game on Sunday, they had their hands up in the air, which is the symbol of the hands up, don't shoot that was started in Ferguson, Missouri. Now, I came out in a commentary last hour, and I pointed out that hands up, don't shoot is based on a lie. It never happened. The forensics are there. The evidence is there. The St. Louis Police Officers Association now issued a statement condemning the Rams football players for doing this. This is touchy. This is a very touchy spot for the NFL. They want to be very careful about not offending anybody, but political statements by players is certainly something that they can't be happy with.
Well, and it's an organization, by the way, that put out some and authorized substantial, all in full support, all of us are, PSA spots about if you're going to protest peacefully and make sure that you respect the law. It's all about respect. And whether it's a mixed message or not, these were individual players that you know didn't have the authority or blessing of the team. The point is this. everybody, especially in the social media generation, which is different than this. This was contrived, this was rehearsed, and it puts it in a different category. But in the social media generation, athletes, entertainers, highly visible spokesmen have to understand how important they are in framing and shaping messages. The whole role model debate, not a role model, non-role model, we can have those discussions too, but the most important issue here is people listen to what these athletes have to say, the good, the bad, the peaceful, the incendiary, and no matter what it's based on, you got to be very careful before you start making statements.
And it's fair to say, too, that there are reports, and I've just heard stories, I've not confirmed these myself, that when the players came out onto the field, they were met with some cheers, and also some people were screaming the N-word at them in the stadium. So it really just makes for a bad situation across the board, and I'm sure the NFL is going to very quietly say to their players, don't do this again. Would you agree?
Well, I think the NFL very quietly needs to, and so does every other sport, say, be very careful what you're saying, because today in this world, you're carrying messages that everybody is listening to you on very carefully, whether you're qualified and have the facts to know about it or not. So be careful.
Yeah, there you go indeed. Rick Horrow, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. I look forward to talking to you again next week.
Stay healthy.
All right, buddy, you too. Travel safely. Break, and we're back with syndicated talker Lars Larson to hammer away at the reality of what's coming out of Ferguson. And at 34 minutes after the hour, how OPEC again becomes more than a bunch of oil sultans being greedy. Think about it. It's money, the Middle East, and discourse there as well. That and so much more coming up right here on MidPoint.